Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What is awesome health? It's actually an acronym that stands for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, and education. These are the pillars of peak health, and my team and I have created a free 12-week course that you can use to transform. Each day, you'll get a written and video lesson delivered to your inbox. Everything is covered from the foundations of digestion to advanced alternative therapies few people know about. And again, it's 100% free. Just go to bioptimizers.com. That's bioptimizers.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we're going to talk about the myriad benefits of strength training and cardiovascular exercise on health and body composition, as well as the misconceptions surrounding the use of exercise as a weight loss tool. And today's guest is Ben Brown, who is the founder of Body Systems, a global health and nutrition coaching company behind the revolutionary Prime Fit OS, a system that has helped clients lose over 15,000 pounds and reclaim their lives. With more than 2 decades of experience, he has coached Fortune 500 executives, professional athletes, and organizations like the Golden State Warriors, Arizona Diamondbacks, and Arizona Cardinals, along with thousands of driven men and women seeking sustainable health solutions. Holding dual master's degree in exercise and wellness and clinical nutrition, Ben also serves as an adjunct faculty in the health sciences department at Arizona State University. And he joins us today from Phoenix. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Great to be here, brother. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since it's nice to catch up. We've been circulating around, connected a number of years ago, and then it's kind of like, oh, great. Let's cycle back and see what's going on in Ben's world.
Full circle, man. I think I had you on my podcast maybe in like 2018.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's great to reconnect.
Well, let's maybe for our listeners who aren't familiar with your work, maybe give a little bit of a background into kind of what's led you into your position now with Prime Fit and kind of what your mission statement is. So maybe you can kind of walk us through the background.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I've always been interested in health and fitness, but growing up, struggled with a myriad of gut-related issues that conventional medicine couldn't really seem to figure out. And so I'd get sick after meals. I'd throw up all the time, have IBS-type symptoms, and kind of the conventional prescription at the time was really just like, well, it's acid indigestion, just take more Pepcid or Zantac, and even got to the point where I did an endoscopy, which is where they, put the camera down your throat to look at the lining of your stomach. And they're like, well, it's a little bit inflamed, but otherwise, we don't really have a diagnosis for you. And of course, at no point are they asking about lifestyle or nutrition or any of those things. But I realized very quickly in experiencing those issues that there was a direct correlation between, what I was consuming and how I was feeling and how I was responding to meals. And that kind of perpetuated over the years. I went to college. I played rugby at University of Arizona down in Tucson for my undergrad. Again, reinforcing sort of the health and fitness theme. I studied physical education at U of A, went up to ASU, Arizona State, here in Phoenix to study exercise and wellness with an emphasis in strength and conditioning, and really got rooted into training athletes, started a personal training business, and kind of developed a lot of knowledge around like how do I help individuals get bigger, stronger, faster, but all the while had this kind of recurring question around, well, what's wrong with me? Why, what's going on with my gut? And that's where, post-grad, I just started studying with mentors all over the world. Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin, Dan Kalish for functional medicine out of San Francisco, and it was sort of going down the road of functional medicine, Wade. Then this was, 2006, so almost 20 years ago, when quote unquote functional medicine kind of first started to be recognized, that I finally had an answer of like, okay, I was diagnosed with H. pylori, a nasty bacterial infection that houses itself in the stomach lining. And it was that coupled with a long history of using antibiotics starting from the time I was like 3 days old. My mom told me that had completely, just destroyed my gut microbiome. And so I had to undergo this process of leveraging nutrition and supplements and lifestyle to heal and restore healthy gut function. And that was the impetus to realize, in conjunction with, my training background, that I had a lot of really valuable skills and tools to be able to help other people do the same. And that's been my mission over the past, going on 20 plus years now. And a lot of that, Wade, in the process of healing myself, was a lot of do's and don'ts. I learned a lot of the things that worked well for me that might not work for other people, and vice versa. And now we work with hard-charging men and women all over the country and the world. And it's really a lot more around energy and confidence and self-belief and body composition, to just get them looking and feeling their absolute best.
It's a great journey. You mentioned guys like Paul Chek. We did an interview with Paul recently. I've been on his podcast a number of times, and I said, if you stick around in the health field long enough, eventually you end up at the mountain where Paul Chek is hanging out. He's got such a wide influence, and back in the day we connected over Charles Poliquin, who was another one of those kind of icons in the performance world that it'll take us decades to unpack some of the information that those guys were figuring out, decades ahead of the most cutting edge science in the world. It's
decades ahead. And what's wild and I think is so interesting, modestly concerning, is I think that we're kind of at a lack of mentorship right now because of the level of information that's at our fingertips. And, going through COVID and everything, I don't know, it's back 20 years ago, I was traveling to spend time with mentors and, accumulating research and everything like that. And now it's, again, everything's at our fingertips, and it's hard to know what works, what to trust, what to believe. And I think that's the health and fitness space as it stands, for sure.
There's something to be said about what I call the transference of the bioelectric field or the biophotonic field, that when you're in the presence of someone, there is the information they're sharing, but there's also an energetic element, I think, that gets transferred in maybe the subconscious realm that unpacks over time. So you spend a concentrated period of time with someone who's developed extraordinary results in a given field. You can read about it or see a podcast about it, but when actually getting into the presence of that person, it changes. And I think you're spot on. And, I always share this with younger folks in the industry right now. I said, there's no digital artificial intelligence version for real life experience and real life human to human connection and nuance. First off, it charges you up on a level. Second, it often builds a relationship where you can reach out to that person when you bump up against nuances, and then they can build on the foundational base that you might have started with and provide you the nuance. Because when you're in a public domain, and it's no exception here, oftentimes the medium forces you to speak into generalities, but excellence is found in the specifics and the nuances of that individual. And in order to get there, you need a ton of experience. And I think that's where we'll come full circle back to what you're doing here with PrimeFit, in that you've got this amazing track record. You've worked with some of the, world leaders in the space, and you've got a lot of real world experience to apply. So let's talk maybe about, body systems and, the PrimeFit OS system. Like why is this so important, and how does it fit with strength training and cardiovascular health and body composition? What are some of the myths that are out there in WW land that's driving you mad that you have to lay it on our listeners?
Well, one of the biggest lessons that I gleaned over my years of experience of trials and tribulations that we all go through, and I think a lot of us have, in the clinical space or in the health and fitness space, sort of have this pain to purpose mission, right? We've all been through our own respective things, and like I mentioned, my gut health issues that forced me to develop the skills and the tools to heal myself, and then to be able to help other people. But in doing so, I mentioned that I learned a lot of hard lessons around, just because it worked for me doesn't mean it works for other people. And so I came out of my own, healing journey with the sort of dogma around, okay, because it worked for me, because I had to do this kind of aggressive, restrictive diet. I eliminated gluten and dairy and soy and sugar, and really had to, implement this substantial supplement regimen, and whether or not I had to or not, it doesn't matter. It worked for me, right? And it helped me kind of heal my gut. And so all of the sudden, because it worked for me, it became my methodology, right? Which I think that's a lot of what's happening in the space around people who are zealotous around their, their exercise programs or their nutrition plans, whether it's CrossFit or whether it's carnivore or whether it's keto, right? We're seeing this left and right and all of this polarizing information. And so I think that in and of itself is what we need to start to push against, right? Of understanding there might be a time and a place, and there usually is for most of these things. But as humans, as biochemical individuals, right? It's not what's appropriate for everyone all of the time under every circumstance. And you mentioned, this level of nuance. And when you're in the industry long enough and you've been exposed to enough people and enough time working with people, then you can very clearly and in a very convicted way understand and say, it depends about everything. Right? And that's kind of what I developed through our PrimeFit OS process. OS stands for operating system. And at the end of the day, it's really just helping people build their own operating system around their nutrition choices, around their exercise choices, around their lifestyle parameters, to the degree that the only way someone's going to be, quote unquote, successful, the only way they're going to change their body composition, change their gut health, change their blood chemistry, right? Change their long-term trajectory, is by creating those strategies and systems that work for them. Now, you have a young one at home. You said 15 months. I have 3 that are 16, 14, and 10. My wife runs her own business. I run my own business. There's a lot of moving pieces. And so I have to be malleable, right? And early on, I was just giving people a one size fits all. This is what you have to do. You have to eliminate all of these things. And then I would have Susie Homemaker, who has 3 kids at home, and I'm this 20-something-year-old know-it-all, say, you got to do all this stuff. There's no possible way she could do that based on her level of experience, her pre-existing knowledge, her level of commitment, right? And so that's where this kind of PrimeFit OS system came about, is by understanding the nuances of real life and how we can make the fundamental principles around nutrition and calorie control and nutrient quality and movement and strength training and sleep and hydration, how we can make all of these work for the individual.
You said something I think I want to highlight a little bit, and you talk about an operating system. I think a lot of people, if they're not as fit as they'd like to be or as healthy as they'd like to be or whatever it is, they are looking at, they think that it's a tactical or a strategic error. But results happen through consistency over time. You know, like it's not a, there's no lack of strategy or ideas or conceptologies or ways to get up the mountain, if you will.
Totally.
You know, right? I think if the one thing we can establish is there's a lot of people that have climbed the mountain of fitness and health and use a different way to get there. There are some baseline principles, but when you to talk about the system, really, if you're not where you need to be, it's probably not because of lack of information. It's the inability to cultivate a system that works within the constraints of one's life. And the reality is there are significant constraints that people are, it could be financial, could be physiological, could be hormonal, it could be lifestyle, work demands, public demands, family demands. All those things are composites that are outside of the calories in, calories out, exercise in, exercise out.
Yeah.
You know, those, the biohacks, whatever. Those are all strategic elements. But the real expertise comes in how do you balance all those things that aren't on the fitness thing. So what have you noticed in your work particularly that people struggle or lean on you to get their systems right? Like, how do you go about addressing that?
So you definitely hit the nail on the head there. There's no lack of information and everyone, quote unquote, knows what to do, but we just set completely unrealistic expectations around ourselves, around all the things that we, quote unquote, know or think we should be doing, but fundamentally, there's not enough time in the day or people don't prioritize things appropriately to be able to do it. And so a lot of times we get really, really granular, Wade, around, okay, well, what does that look like? Show me your calendar, right? Mm-hmm. Show me your screen time. What does your bedtime routine look like? What does your wake up routine look like? When are your meals? What are you having at your meals, right? How are we bookending the day between nutrition and exercise and setting yourself up for success? And so it very much becomes this granular process of helping people actually plan and prepare accordingly. Because one of the quotes I use frequently is, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And I think for a lot of guys like us, a lot of guys and men and women that I work with, they have their calendars, quote unquote, dialed in, right, where they have all of their appointments. They have their client appointments and their work appointments and their kids' sports appointments in there. And then they tell me that their exercise is a priority, their meals are a priority, their movement's a priority, their sleep's a priority, but none of that is scheduled in. And so it's not unreasonable when someone or something else ends up taking the place of those things that they say are priorities. And so it's like, it's not unreasonable then, if it is a priority, right, to let's get it on the calendar and let's figure out how to realistically do it, to the degree that when we do, we quickly realize, well, I just don't have enough time to do all of the things I think I'm supposed to do or should do. And so how do we set realistic expectations around, okay, well, I was committed to doing 4 days a week of strength training. In reality, I can only commit to 2. That's fine. Let's just do 2 consistently. Let's focus on steps. Let's focus on getting enough protein at your meals. How are you planning and when are you planning and preparing, and so on and so forth. And that's really a very systematic approach that we take with so many people, in conjunction with, I mentioned the screen time, is like, don't tell me you don't have time. We all have the time. We're usually just not using our time wisely. And oftentimes that looks like, and I'm just as guilty as the rest, it looks like a lot of screen time and wasted time there.
The addiction of the screens, I think, can't be understated in the world. These are, designed to hook you into it. And when you're involved in screen time, I've noticed the differentiation between if I'm on my phone or my computer and my perceptual awareness of time.
Yeah.
So if I was to sit at my desk here today all day long with no computer and just stare at the wall, the day would seem to go by very fast. Many days I'm hitting here at 6 a.m. and I'm coming to bed at 11 o'clock at night, and the day flew by.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, and I'm old enough to remember life before internet and life before cell phones and smartphones and social media, now the world of AI. So it gives me at least a reference point in the past that a lot of people today don't have. What are some of the big movers that you find that are eating up people's ability to integrate a good system? You mentioned the phone. Is there other elements that really that require some expertise and planning to get around? Where do you think people fail in getting their programs in order?
Well, again, I just think it's lack of clarity around how they're using their time, and so it's fundamentally like planning things into the calendar that are important. I also see a lot of opportunity around creating a consistent bedtime and wake up routine. And like I said, bookending the day as being non-negotiable factors that are essentially just compounding variables to success. In other words, by us committing to turning off the television or putting the phone away and away from the bed and going to bed at actually a reasonable time, 9 or 10 p.m., so that we can actually get up early enough to, especially for a parent, maybe have some personal time or get in a workout or go for a walk or get some journaling or reading time, and that very important personal time, or maybe some deep, meditation or something like that, so that we can then be committed to kind of then focusing our energies on the other things in our life that matter. Obviously our career, obviously our family. That is hard to overstate the importance. And so that's oftentimes another thing that we will spend a lot of time working on, around getting very clear around what that routine looks like and how to consistently reinforce it, not just through logistical calendar planning, but also through effective communication with your significant other, as to the importance of how it impacts kind of my day-to-day processes, and ultimately the family's success too.
That's a big topic I want to dive into, because I see this happen, and I do find it's often a source of divorce for couples, that maybe they've kind of careened off track with all of the responsibilities of parenthood. And then one of the partners decides to, you know what, I'm changing the way I'm going to be. I'm going to get on this new diet program. Maybe they had a health scare, or maybe they just decided that they weren't going to slide down anymore in their physicality. And they get a coach, or they hire someone, and they start making these gains, and they're feeling really good about it. But then it seems like their partner is becoming resentful about that. How does that show up when in your world, and maybe how do you manage all of that with the responsibility of family and kids, and the disbursement? You got, both of you are working in your own jobs, so there's a lot of things to manage there to fit within those bookends. So how do you go about doing that? What's your suggestions around that? It's
a good question, Wade. It's a deep question. At the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head around, I genuinely believe that you are only going to be as successful as the level of support that you have at home. And so it becomes extremely necessary for you to develop a level of communication with your significant other around what that actually needs to look like. And you said, there's oftentimes, if we want to start to focus on our health, but our partner isn't ready to go down that road, then perhaps there's a level of resentment. Maybe it's a level of resentment around the investment that's necessary. Maybe it's a level of resentment around them not feeling confident and comfortable in who they are either, and you taking these steps, but they're not actually ready, willing, and able to make the changes that you're wanting to make, whether it's conscious or whether it's unconscious, then it often comes with some level of sabotage. And I genuinely think that it's probably unconscious more than anything, but you have to understand a lot of times when, and we have these conversations a lot with our clientele, because because you're learning, if you come into our environment, you come into our community, it's like you're learning, you're absorbing information through this fire hose around, okay, here's how I just structure my calendar, and here's why protein's important, and here's how I hydrate, and here's my morning and evening routine. And like, you're starting to comprehend and understand and start to change your behaviors around all of this stuff. But it's so challenging for you to then take all of that information and relay that to your partner, who you fundamentally need support from. And so then it becomes a situation where maybe even you resent them for preparing a spaghetti dinner, which normally wouldn't be a problem, but you're like, I can't eat, spaghetti now. You're like, why are you quote unquote sabotaging me? And they're like, I'm just trying to stay alive here and feed our children, and manage my work schedule. And so I think that getting very good about how you guys communicate. My wife and I are very good about kind of setting our weekly standards, spending enough time together to talk about what we're focusing on for the week, almost having some weekly objectives around our meals, around our exercise. I know, and she knows unequivocally, that we need our personal time in the gym in order to show up as our best self, energetic, confident, full of self-belief, present mentally, physically, emotionally. And so that's just becomes kind of a requisite to the degree that I would make every effort that I could to make sure that you guys are on the same page. And even if they're not ready necessarily to make the changes that you're making, that they know exactly what's required to support you to make those changes. And it doesn't take a lot of simply like, here's what my coach suggests. And oftentimes I'll hop on the phone with significant others and just kind of talk through like kind of what our objectives are as far as nutrition planning and meal prep. Because they, usually, Wade, they want to be supportive. They just don't know how.
Yeah, and you get into those kind of touchy conversations. It's really cool that you mediate those conversations, because that often really assists, because I think sometimes other things can bleed through in a person-to-person context, but if there's a mediator of that information, it's often heard and received and acted upon a little bit better, because then they feel that they can ask questions and be curious, as opposed to kind of deviate to fear and I don't know how to do this, and all the negative connotations that can kind of spin off out of that that really have nothing to do with the actual situation but are relative in the communication aspect. That's a powerful insight, because I think it's something that does come up when people are going towards their best life or whatever. If their spouse isn't on board at first, you got to have that support.
And the beautiful thing is, when you can, if you're the one trying to make change and you can just accept responsibility over your own behaviors and your own decisions, and you can commit to the flexibility around what's required, right? The invariable compromise that comes with marriage and partnership, right? But also, what I've observed time and again is simply giving yourself enough runway to allow yourself to focus on the things that you know you need to do, to lead by example and make the best decisions for you. And it's not uncommon for people in your circle, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your peers, whether it's your children, to see those changes and then start to commit to making those changes as well. At some point, to start to realize, hey, I'm finally ready, or I want to, or by virtue of you doing these things, I'm much more compelled to want to do them too. And that's amazing when then you two can start to synergize on that path. Because I can say personally, my wife and I haven't always been on the same trajectory. And there was a time where, I've always been pretty myopically focused on health and fitness. And there have been times in her life, it being a previous collegiate athlete, and times when she's in fantastic shape, other times when she's just immersed in corporate America and not. And the level of friction and resentment that was present on both sides. And candidly, just coming to conversations, one of the beautiful things about COVID for us was that it gave us the opportunity to just start to go out and go for walks together. And we realized that level of spending time together and movement and communication that wasn't forced allowed us to express ourselves. And, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And a lot of good has come from that.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
I'm a big fan. I discovered that strategy a long time ago, which was when discussing sensitive topics with my partner, to actually go out on a walk while we're doing it, so that it's not like against each other. It's walking in a direction as the communication goes back and forth. And I can tell you, as a strategy of dealing with difficult conversations, because the quality of your life is directly proportionate to the amount of difficult conversations you want to have. At the end of the day, we kind of live in a world that wants to insulate us from the difficult conversations, and those are now coming at us at speeds never before experienced by humanity, with all of the technological changes that have occurred, AI coming into various governments, the politicization of everything, the plethora of information and competing narratives that have seemed no relatability to each other. And, a great example is if you get someone that, I always say, have a person just show you their YouTube feed or their social media feed and compare it to yours. And you'll start to see of like, wow, they are getting a completely different version of events in the world than I am. And that's unique. Before, we kind of had shared common experiences, like, everybody had the same TV shows and the same news anchors and the same newspapers. So the messaging and narrative of what the world is, right or wrong, was consistently shared. Now we're living in these little echo chambers that have been crafted by the machines that are pushing people apart. And when you put those things down with your partner and you go for a walk, oftentimes the difficulty of the conversation melts just while you're walking, and then you go, oh yeah, that's exactly why I'm with this person. They're so cool. That's why I married this person. That's why we have kids together. This is really fun. And I know as we've had a new child myself, that's been a part that my partner and I, we both hired psychologists. She's a studying psychologist. We both had psychologists for our own personal stuff, and then also a relationship psychologist. Yeah. Just as an accounting procedure that we would check in on and then cultivate the behaviors. And I learned a lot from that process. And I'm excited because it's our date night, and after this podcast, we're gonna go. We get a little time away where we go for a walk, go to a nice restaurant, chat about things, catch up on things, and come back and make sure that each other's needs are being met or each other's concerns are being addressed. We might not have a resolution for those, but at least they're front and center in the moment. And I think so many people don't connect. They're connected digitally, but they're not going back to that whole biophotonic exchange of human-to-human contact and taking the time away from all that to really connect and remind ourselves. What are some other elements that you find that as a cultivating this operating system? I love that, the operating system. What other elements do you feel are critical that people often overlook when they're designing, developing, considering a health and fitness regimen to optimize their lives?
Well, we talk about three kind of main pillars to how our Prime Fit OS process works. One is the science of data collection. I believe that, we want to be able to use data and leverage data to make informed decisions. And I think it's important that people develop awareness around those objective metrics. Maybe it's our weight, maybe it's our circumference measurements, maybe it's our blood work, maybe it's the feedback that you're getting from your wearable, like your Oura Ring or your Whoop, as indicators of progress or change. Second to that is what we call the psychology of behavior change. And this is very much what's happening between the ears. And as I expressed, is not getting lost in this dichotomous relationship with food and exercise. In other words, the all or nothing approach that so many of us have been guilty of over the years of saying, hey, it's January 1, I'm going all in on this plan or this exercise plan. Or like I said, the way that I used to be extremely dogmatic about kind of this regimented nutrition plan, it's my way or the highway, which I learned very quickly. I couldn't even personally maintain. I would crash and burn every single weekend after, the first few months of cleaning things up. And of course, as people with real lives and responsibilities have such a hard time with this restrictive dieting mindset. So learning where that level of flexibility and freedom lies, and how you said, just it's so much more about things that we can be consistent with versus what do I need to completely restrict and avoid or only focus on, or what supplements do I need to be religious about? That's not how the game should be played. And then lastly, we call it the art of coaching. And this is where accountability and support comes into play. You mentioned, climbing to the top of the proverbial mountain. And we all need co-pilots. We all need Sherpas, right? Someone who's been there before. They've guided other people up the mountain. They know the terrain. They know where the obstacles lie. And they know the best route given the individual who they're guiding, right? Because there's going to be a different route for everyone based on how quickly they want to get up, how aggressive they want to be, right? Their level of commitment, their previous level of knowledge, and so on and so forth. And so I can't understate, in the absence of obviously leveraging data and not being too polarizing in our approach, I can't understate the importance of where accountability falls into this process, of truly having a support system that can help you navigate all of the nuances of just real life. I mean, I've been on a couple client calls today. I have I was on the call with a mom of 7 as she was driving to her kids' library, reading time, and she's an ex-college athlete. Her husband's an ex-professional baseball player, and their life looks very different than another guy I had a call with who's single, lives in Colombia, and different responsibilities, different goals, yet at the same time, they have different obstacles that they need to learn how to make decisions around. And I think that's the valuable part about really what the coaching process and the operating system is.
Who is your client, and how would you describe what does the journey look like? Like, who are you serving? What is it like to work with you, and how does that unfold? Maybe you can kind of explain that to people. And that's for people who are thinking, hey, you know what? Yeah, we've touched on some things that I know that I've struggled with. I haven't thought about my fitness and my health as a system.
Yeah. I mean, most of the individuals we work with are kind of high achieving, hard charging men and women, usually mothers and fathers, business owners, decision makers. Oftentimes, they've been successful in other areas of their life in that they've got a great marriage, or they built a business, or, they have a great family life, or like I said, they've been competitive in sports in their maybe previous life. And they're finally at a juncture of their life where they just don't love how they look and feel. And they realize, kind of look back and realize they've spent so much time and energy kind of prioritizing everyone and everything else, kind of putting themselves on the back burner. And for a lot of the guys that I work with, there comes a tipping point, usually in our early 30s, where they kind of see themselves in the mirror and like, I don't recognize this guy. This is not who I am. And everything on paper is great, right? In terms of the business and the family, and it all should be awesome, but it's not awesome because I don't love what I don't love the reflection staring back at me. And despite all of the things that I've tried, nothing really seems to stick. And usually the realization, and that I help them identify, is, and I mentioned this of kind of quote unquote knowing what to do, all of the things that they try and do end up being so overly restrictive, despite it being conventional wisdom to go down that road, whether they're just trying to eat clean, whether they're trying to cut out sugar for 30 days, whether they're trying to do 75 hard, whether they're doing, keto or carnivore, whether they're doing some boot camp style class, or maybe they went down the HCG route, or maybe they're on GLPs now because their doctor said that makes sense for them, and the 10 or 20 or 30 pounds that they want to lose, despite not being a type 2 diabetic yet, right? There's so many avenues. Maybe they've tried a lot of those, but they keep coming back to the position of, yeah, it worked for a little while, but it's just not working now, and I can't seem to figure out the solution or put the puzzle pieces together for me. And this is where, we have conversations around, okay, this is where the system falls into place. First, let's understand, one, there's nothing wrong with you. It's very logical, the process that you've taken, but to continue to perpetuate it would be problematic. And I hope you can understand why based on literally what I just explained. It's this all or nothing mentality that ultimately is going to end up with us crashing and burning, because that's not how human psychology works.
Yeah, I think you really touched on something there. It's kind of like, if you want to do, if you want to get the best deals on travel, you don't need to go build a new app. You just need to find the app that does it. If you want to find the best hotel, you get an app, which is essentially a system that has been figured out to optimize how to search for that. And all of the apps that were out there today are essentially systems that, someone's figured out a system to solve a particular problem in a different way. So of course, if I want to do something new on my phone, I just download the app. And I think that's a good metaphor for what people are getting when they're working with you, is they're getting the application in a real world sense of how do you get the operating system that is going to allow you to hit your goals when it's failed before. You're using the wrong app and you're the solution to that. So maybe you can share before we wrap up, how do you work with people? You said you work with people all over the world. How do they get a hold of you? How do they connect with you? What does that relationship look like? Maybe you can kind of give your best story around that.
Yeah, I mean, we're an all virtual coaching program. I am located in Phoenix here. I do have a lot of clients locally, and we do enjoy getting together as a community from time to time. And we do have clients come in from, all around the country to come in for retreats and what have you, because I'm a firm believer in the value that comes from community. And we've already explained, the power therein. But of course, people can find me on social media, but the first logical step is simply to just have a conversation, to identify, where you are now, where you want to go. Let's identify the roadblocks, or as I said, the obstacles that are getting in the way, and then come up with a realistic plan to help you bridge that gap. And if it makes sense, right, to have a further conversation around what the roadmap might look like, and I feel like I have the tools to support you, then I usually am very matter of fact around what that could look like. If not, just like you, Wade, I've got an unbelievable network of health practitioners that I'm more than happy to help point in the right direction. And so what I would implore is, if this conversation is resonating with anyone and anyone listening, then it can't hurt simply just for us to have a conversation. And I would encourage you to reach out. But with our coaching process, there's kind of three distinct phases. We call it prime, transform, and sustain. And first and foremost, like I said, with data collection, is we just want to understand and help you develop more awareness around your existing behaviors so that we can start to address the low-hanging fruit. Usually it's around your calorie intake or your movement, the type of movement that's going to work best for you, your lifestyle behaviors, your sleep cycles, your stress management, all of those types of things. And then sustain is understanding the seasons of life. We call them the nutrition seasons of understanding. A lot of people go into dieting sort of this idea of dieting in perpetuity. I'm going to white knuckle it, and I'm going to go really hard, but there's no end in sight, right? And you, coming from a bodybuilding background, you know very clearly there's a dieting season, there's a maintenance season, and there's a growth season. And that's a lot of what we work through with clients is, we might have a 12-week trajectory to lose as much body fat as possible, but we're looking ahead 6 months, 12 months, 2 years ahead, as far as like what's going on with family life, with business, with travel. When do you want to look and feel your best? Our average client right now, Wade, is with us for 33 months, I think. And it's simply because we're setting the expectations much bigger and broader than what people are experiencing through their feeds. We're thinking very, very short term, and change doesn't happen short term. We've got to expand our time horizon, say we can get a lot done short term, but this is an evolution, man. And it's going to take us time and energy and effort and sacrifice and trade-offs to make the change that you said that you want to make. And this means everything from obviously changing your behaviors around nutrition and exercise, to changing your social support system, right? To changing your expectations, to changing your communities, to changing your involvement in anything and everything around how to truly prioritize the things that you say matter to you. And so it very much becomes this proverbial identity shift, not to be too cliche around that term these days, but that's what we want to have happen.
Ben, that's been super enlightening. Where do people reach and connect to you to take advantage of what you've shared and kind of get their system in order for their goals and their objectives?
Sure. I'm sure you'll have our website link down below. You can reach me and connect with me through Instagram at Body Systems Coaching. And if it's okay with you, I've got a 30-day reset guide that I'd be happy to share for free for your listeners. I'll send you that link, and they can download the 30-day reset. That's based on our 5M fat loss framework, and it's around our mindset, our meals, our movement, our muscle, and our metabolism. And so it entails a lot of the fundamental principles that I just discussed in very simplistic ways that we can be accountable for through an easy tracking process.
Excellent information. I love the system concept. It's so important that people overlook, and I'm delighted to have you on the podcast. I want to thank all our listeners for listening today. I would encourage you to reach out to Ben, download his book. All the show notes and links are accompanying this presentation. And to wrap things up, Ben, any final words of encouragement for our audience?
I think we covered everything. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to speak and share my knowledge and wisdom and reconnect with you. And so I appreciate and applaud everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedule to listen in. And I would just encourage them to take action. And based on this conversation, I would say take a hard look at your calendar and consider if the things that we discussed and the things that you know are priorities for you, if those are actually in your calendar. And if not, well, then you know what to do.
Beautifully said. This is the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm YT Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Thanks for joining today, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.